Okay. Okay, so by this point, you probably would have seen I've had some major issues with the coil. There was some huge arcing from the king lead to the positive terminal. I don't know what was causing it. I stripped everything down yesterday, checked the resistance of every wire, checked all the earth, checked the power, took the distributor bit, took the cap off, checked it was all clean. I mean, it's all brand new. And then when I put it all back together and tried it, not expecting any difference, it's working fine. So I think it is definitely something to do with the distributor. I don't know why. There's not really many moving parts in there, but it's certainly now working okay. So I tried to fire the car up. Not sure if I'll put those videos in because it's just a lot of me cranking. It's backfiring a couple of times, but it's not. And even with look at the easy start, it's not going. So because I was thinking back, I had the distributor out for a while when I was doing oil priming and I was ready to do some stuff and I didn't have it in, but I did wire the push ignition start at that point. So I definitely have tested it. So I think I've turned the engine over on the button without really meaning to, without the distributor in. So I'm pretty sure it's out of sync now. So I'm going to take the valve cover off this side, obviously for cylinder number 1, turn it around with an arm on a socket to get it to top dead center, and check on the valves that that's actually top dead center on the compression stroke, and I'm not like 180 degrees out, and it's not on the exhaust stroke, just to double check that that's where it's supposed to be. The timing marks where they're supposed to be. The distributor's in the right location. Obviously the top is lined up, cylinder number 1, plug 1 with the mark, and there's a mark down on the block in here, which I'll just double check that's all in the same place, and then that should enable me, in theory, no reason why it shouldn't want to fire. Okay, so that's the valve cover off this side. There's obviously oil around here, which means when I prime the engine, it's done what it's supposed to have done, which is good. Okay, now I'm going to turn the crank on a bar to get the timing marks lined up with what should be top dead center, and we'll just check that it's actually, like I mentioned, I check that it is on the compression stroke. Okay, I'm going to spin the engine round and watch the valves move and see where they are in their cycle. Should be in one complete set of rotations and back to the original positions. Right, so my explanation for this now, having used the wrench or the socket to turn over the crank, I've watched the valve lift up. This one, which is the inlet one as far as I'm understanding, because I'm not an engineer, so I might be wrong, but this is the inlet. This is opened and closed, and now it's at top dead center. If I keep going, then it will be the exhaust one opens and closes. So as I understand it, now it's opened for inlet of fuel and air mix and closed, and it should be ready to spark. So it should be at top dead center. Took the distributor cap off, took the retaining bolt out. Let's put the light on. There was a mark, we can see it. There's a little pen mark on the front there. You can see in the marker pen on the shiny bit, and that black mark on here is where number 1 lead is. So this rotor arm is not where it should be. So if I line it up with the rotor arm on plug lead 1 on the cap, then there is actually a smudged black mark on the blue paint, which now lines up, well, I can see it better than the camera, with the black mark. Oh, we get that in there. Black mark on the shiny bit. It's hard to see, and it's hard to see because the actual marker pen on the blue has obviously got oil on, something on it. It's actually smudged, so pretty much guessing. But either way, the common sense check is that that rotor arm has to be pointing to where plug lead number 1 is, which is the one mark with the mark on there with number 1. So it's obviously quite close to that, but the vacuum hose will still go on there. So I think I can tighten it down. Not all the way, obviously put the cap back on, put the valve covers on, put the plugs back in, and this should at least sound like it wants to fire. So let's work from here. I'm really making this up as I go, but from different bits of advice and from different YouTube videos. Hopefully this is it. But it does, it is on top dead centre, the angle, pretty much spot on that line. So yeah, let's roll with this. So I'm not sure if what I've just done was okay, but I've been looking closer. So obviously that rotor arm was in line with the mark, which is in line with the mark for number 1 on the other side of the cap. I can't show you. There's another small mark here, which I think is where this needs to be lined up with when it's being pushed in, because obviously it rotates because of the angles of the spines as it goes in. So I just thought, well, I didn't want this basically touching the hose there, because it just looks a bit shit and it'd be awkward for the vacuum hose. So with that lined up, I've lifted the whole thing out, turned this to line up with that black mark, turned the whole unit to get a better for the vacuum retardation thingy there, and put it back in, and as it's slotted in, this is automatically rotated itself around and pretty much spot on lined up again with the number 1 mark. So now it's back in place. It's seated down in there. I can put the retaining bolt back in nice and loosely. There's room for the vacuum hose on there. It's lined up with number 1, top dead centre of number 1. So I think we can go with that. I might be making all this up, but as far as I'm aware, I might have done that right. Let's see if it fires. You'll see now everything's back together, so the valve covers are back on, plugs are back in, leads are back in place, timing lights connected, time lights on the battery. I also tightened up the water temperature sensor. That had a slight weep I could see, so I've taken it out, put some PTFE tape around it, put it back in. What else have I done? Yeah, so the distributor still can move a little bit freely, so I put it roughly where it's supposed to be. Everything's connected. So I've taken the fuse out of the fuel pump, and I'm going to spray some Easy Start in there just to make sure it wants to fire, and then if it sounds like it wants to fire, I will then use the fuel pump and actually see if I can fire it up and run. So yeah, I think I'll go to the GoPro and we'll see if it works. Okay, so I'm just going to use some Easy Start. There's no fuse in the fuel pump circuit, so the fuel pump won't work. Just Easy Start, having done all the work I've just done on the other video you've seen, or the other section of this video. Let's see if it fires, see if it wants to fire, see if the timing's right now. Start cap fell off. That wants to fire. Let's put some petrol in it. Fuse is back in to the fuel system. Easy Start away. Right, let's see if it runs. bumper on. That was fun.
That sounds better.
Yeah, that's the first time it's fired.
Yeah.
I'll leave the door open actually. So now I'm trying to fire it again, keep it running. I'll adjust the jets, but just keep it running to about 1500. Adjust the jets so it ticks over about 1500 RPM is what it's supposed to do. Try again. Okay, right, so now I'm going to go for the next set of, the next run time, which is another 20 minutes at least, it says in the manual. I'm going to wind the timing back down to 850 RPM roughly, just check that the timing is right then still, then bring it back up, and then it says run for a total of 40 minutes approximately, so it's another 20-minute run really. Hey, so I thought I'd do a catch-up update video because last couple of days with this trying to start the car, then starting the car, I've been using the GoPro, and I thought that the sound was better on the GoPro, so I've got quite a lot of footage on there, but me talking to it hasn't really come through. So the quick update, so the The car started, was it 2 days ago? Yeah, yesterday morning for the first time. The day before I was very, very close with the easy start, and it burped and fathered a bit, but the battery, I just worn out the battery from trying. So I had that on charge all night, came back yesterday, fired it a little bit with the easy start, and it sounded like it wanted to go, so I turned the fuel on, which you should be able to see in the videos, which I've either shown you yet or I'm about to show you, and then it fired up. And then there was a bit of a problem because I fired it from inside the car and I couldn't take my foot off the accelerator because the idle screw was wound, well, from factory, which is quite low. So I couldn't get off the accelerator in order to reach the engine, to rev it from the engine, to do the adjustments there. So it took me a little while with my slow brain to work that out. So what it has shown me was I was surprised at how quickly the water heated up and the top radiator pipe got too hot to touch very fast, and because I don't have an expansion tank in it yet, it's on order, quite a lot past quite a lot past the cap and went onto the floor. So I wasn't sure. I've taken the thermostat out and checked that, and that does open at 83 degrees. It's set to 82 on there, so it opens about 83. So that's okay. I think I might have had a bit of an air leak, so I've actually jacked the car up on one side. It's a bit wonky at the moment. See if I can work any bubbles out. And also the main issue, which I'll spin the camera around now, was the headers and the heat they kick out. There's a lot more heat in those than I'd really envisaged. And on the driver's side, with the brake master cylinder and the servo, it's too close. So we'll spin the camera around and see if we can show you. This was the setup we were going with. It's higgledy-piggledy, but there we go. So I put some heat protection on the brake switch because that was getting really hot and I didn't want to melt it. So yeah, I've now just learned that this is not a sustainable setup. I've still got this leaky bung. It got knackered when I put this in, unbeknown to me, but when I put pressure in, it started to weep out around. So I'm just actually trying to find a bung for that because it came from Dax. I'm not exactly sure which one it is. I have been told it's a Mark V Ford Escort. Excuse me. But I've been to Ford, I've been to different parts companies, and no one wants to sell, or no one has just the bungs. I want to sell the entire unit, and I don't really want to pay sort of 70 to 90 quid for a whole master cylinder when there's nothing wrong with this. Is new, it's just the bung. So someone's about to get back to me in about the next hour as to whether they've got some bungs, which will be a couple of quid, which is ideal. So more to the point, these headers. So really I need to move this one and this one. So this is one pair. So really I think we need to do some drastic cutting and shaping. Now, having some ideas, which I haven't actually spoken to Gareth, the guy who does the welding for me, about yet, but I'm thinking that I'm going to be switching these over. This one is going to be cut where it comes out here, and it's going to go straight underneath to this one. So that gets rid of this close to the master cylinder and the slave cylinder, which is really too close. And I think this one will come more out round somehow and into here because this is too close to this. So if that works, we take the heat away from the brake cables there, the brake pipes, the master cylinder itself from underneath here, and yeah, the slave cylinder. So otherwise I'm pretty much stuck because it gets bloody hot, and these things have all kind of got to be there. And because I've made this up as I've gone, because obviously there's no kit, no instructions, just the bits that had to be there, I've had to work around. And yeah, it's obviously my mistake not knowing quite how hot they were going to get. They do glow orange a bit towards the end, but I think that's the air fuel mixture. So that's what I'm going to think about today for a while. And yeah, and the radiator fan switch, I actually bypassed it in the end because it wasn't coming on when I thought it should. Well, obviously everything was really hot, too hot to touch. So I'm going to just pop that out and do a test on that up home, put it in a saucepan and boil it up a bit and see what the temperature is, and then see if I get connectivity across it. Obviously the fan works when I just jump the leads there. And if I need to buy, I think I need about 95 degrees. I mean, if the thermostat's 82, 83, then about 10 degrees, just over 10 degrees higher, should be fine. That's what I've read online. So yeah, I'm gonna get into these problems, and then I think we're gonna do a bit of fabrication in the car and start building some more aluminium to cover the suspension at the back. Yeah, just make some forward progress. And then it looks like I'll top up the water again because that shit itself out. So there we go. That's it for today.